Okay, so this is a quick video for a 2013 Kia Optima 2.4 alternator replacement and a fuel pressure switch. Yeah. So there's a few things that you have to do to be able to get ready for this. The easiest way that I've found to do it is to get rid of the wiring harness completely. So on the back side you have a VVT solenoid. You unplug it, take it out of here, take it out of here. This was all broken off whenever I got it, so it wasn't me. Disconnect it from here. On the lower side of the intake, which is on this portion here, all these were already popped off as well. This is an intake runner valve, I believe is what they're called. This is a MAF sensor. And then you have the throttle body and then vacuum lines. You also have the PCV line, which goes to the front of the valve cover. Anyways, there is a bolt here, a nut here, a bolt here, a nut here, and a bolt here. And then there's two on the bottom. There's one here and one here. Every one of these are 12 millimeter. Ideally, you'd like to be able to take this bracket right here off. That way it doesn't catch on anything when pulling it out. But considering all of this is already broken and out of the way, it was pointless to do. So this is where I was mentioning where the bolts and nuts were. So here's a bolt, nut, bolt, nut, bolt. Pretty sure there's a sleeve missing. Otherwise, this one's got to go back into the intake. And hopefully it lines up. They're pretty tight. The electric ratchet did it, but it didn't do a very good job. I do have a 3/8 drive electric ratchet from Milwaukee, but it doesn't do very good either whenever it comes to space because it has such a massive head on it. Anyhow, this is the wiring harness that sits on top of the intake. These are 10 millimeter bolts. 10 millimeter here, there, and there. Disconnect the camshaft position sensor. This is a PCV line. This is a vacuum line. This is a vacuum line. This is a vacuum line. These two right here are still connected to the side of the intake. This one right here connects to the breather tube, I believe. Yes. And then this one right here is still on the breather tube, which is here. This is the breather tube on the side of the valve cover. This is the breather tube that I pointed out last. So in order to get this the rest of the way off, underneath of this car, there's a few plastic panels. There's one on that side and one on this side. All of the bolts that are in there are 10 millimeter, except for the few screws that are Phillips heads, which I didn't take those out. I took the mounting bars loose. You can see one right there. The other one is over here, and the last one is over there. I started on this side first. Took the bolt out for this, took the bolt out for that, and took the bolt out for that, and then separated the two down the middle. That way it would give me a little bit of wiggle room to be able to get them out. This one also has a splash guard, which is there under, I don't know if you can see that very well due to the sun, but this is the splash guard. It had a few 10 millimeter bolts and then a few push clips. Sometimes they're called Christmas trees, but this one's not a Christmas tree because it's not flared in multiple places down through it. This one is getting the fuel pressure switch changed because it's throwing a code for low fuel pressure. So we'll start there first, since that's easier than putting a fuel pump in, which is the next thing if this doesn't work. This fuel pressure switch looks to be 1 1/16 maybe. It has a zip tie on it from factory, I think. has zip ties throughout holding the wiring harness on for the injectors, which I'm going to assume that those are factory as well. This particular vehicle has bad valve stem seats or seals. It's very hot out. There is oil inside of every one of these, and I've taken a video for the customer to show that. When you get ready to put this back on, the intake needs to be cleaned on the mounting surface. Any oil needs to be removed. Any trash needs to be removed. So all of this is going to be cleaned up. Even that crap that's inside of there is going to get cleaned up. This bit of oil right here will be cleaned up. I've got the new alternator on already. These bolts are 14 millimeter. The tensioner here is 16, I believe. I think I used a 17, but I'm pretty sure it was a 16 that it was supposed to be. The bolts for the throttle body are 10 millimeter. They don't really go in very far, so if you think that they need to go in further, they don't. The plastic surface for this is only about a ½ inch. And if you're looking for this video, look for a diagram for the vacuum lines on the back of the intake. Give it a few seconds here before I continue on. These absolutely have to be checked while this is off. The hoses are still semi-malleable, although they are stiff hoses. When cleaning this up, do not use brake parts cleaner. Best to use soap and water. Brake parts cleaner will deform the seals. Although it's really quick at cleaning, it does deform the seals. So with that being said, no brake parts cleaner on this part of it at all. Only soap and water until you mount it back up, and then you can clean this surface with brake parts cleaner, not the surface with the seals. I do believe that covers just about everything. So far, I've got about a day and a half off and on in this. We live in Southwest Florida, so it rains all the time. Oh yeah, don't forget to disconnect the battery on the positive or the negative side, not the positive side. And if you do take the throttle body off completely with the intake, you will have to bleed the coolant. That line here, I can't see what I'm doing, the sun's too bright. This line and this line both have engine coolant running through them. So if you take those lines off, get prepared for a mess, because you have to bleed the system back down. As you can see, I didn't disconnect any hoses whatsoever. Just remove the wiring harness, which sits back into its home whenever it's all done. You got to take the intake off. You have to fight a little bit to get over the dipstick tube. If you lift the intake straight up, pull it back just a little bit, it'll be catching over here on this side, here, and then it'll catch right up under this. Pull the intake back towards the front of the vehicle some more, and it'll bypass that sensor completely. Just be careful and not break it. No use in putting parts into a car that it doesn't need. Thanks for watching.